Good evening, I'm Fanashe and you're watching AWANI Tonight. Former Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin has been arrested by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission (MACC). He is expected to face 7 charges under laws related to abuse of power and money laundering at the Kuala Lumpur Sessions Court tomorrow. The MACC said Muhyiddin was detained at 1 p.m. after he was questioned over the Jana Wibawa project, an initiative introduced by his administration during the COVID-19 movement control order to empower Bumiputra contractors. His arrest follows that of 2 other Bersatu leaders, Datuk Wan Saiful Wan Jan and Adam Radlan Adam Muhammad. Muhyiddin was also questioned last month regarding the same project and has denied the accusations, describing them as political vendetta ahead of the 6 state elections. Following that, Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim stressed he had not interfered in MACC's probe of Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin. He also denied claims that the arrests were evidence of political persecution by the government.
Tapi saya nak tegaskan di sini, semua orang yang mahu negara ini bersih dari rasuah harus lihat kes satu persatu sama ada benar ada pendakwaan politik yang disebut ataupun berdasarkan fakta. Yang saya sebut selama ini tentang kes Jana Wibawa Tempatan Banjir itu berdasarkan dokumen Kementerian Keuangan, bukan SPRM atau Jabatan Peguam Negara.
The government will allow retirement savings in the Employees Provident Fund (EPF) to be used as security for emergency loans. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, who is also Finance Minister, says this will apply specifically for EPF members facing financial constraints. However, this is provided that the contributors have enough savings in their EPF accounts. He added that it was important to remember that the EPF was meant for retirement savings. In his winding-up speech of Budget 2023, Anwar said this approach will be taken in response to the repeated calls for the government to allow another round of withdrawals. The federal budget was passed at the policy stage with a majority voice vote in the Dewan Rakyat today. The government will not entertain efforts by the media to lobby for changes to Malaysia's 5G network rollout. Communications and Digital Minister Fahmi Fazil said his ministry is still working with the Ministry of Finance in reviewing the project and will announce a decision by end of March.
Saya dan juga pasukan tidak akan melayan lobby daripada kenyataan-kenyataan yang dibuat sama ada oleh media dalam negara ataupun luar. Kita tidak akan terkesan dari segi penilaian, perbincangan, penelitian dan sekiranya ada mana-mana media yang mendengar ucapan saya ini, stop it. No more lobbying melalui media luar ataupun media dalam negara maupun luar. Enough. Ya, jadi berikan kami ruang untuk bincang hinggalah ke penghujungnya. We will not entertain and we will not be swayed and neither will we be prejudiced.
Kampa MP Chong Zimin asked if there would be financial implications if the 5G rollout were to be reviewed and tender given to Chinese firm Huawei. Currently, Sweden's Ericsson holds the 10-year 11 billion ringgit 5G contract rollout in Malaysia. Fahmi replied that the government respects the sanctity of the contract inked and will proceed as planned. He also revealed that the government will meet industry players next Wednesday to discuss the challenges as well as how to create healthy competition among the industry players. Meanwhile, the prosecution has filed an appeal against the High Court's decision to acquit Datuk Sri Najib Razak and former 1MDB CEO Arul Kandasamy of tampering with a federal audit. The notice of appeal was filed at the Court of Appeal well within the 14-day limit. Last Friday, the Kuala Lumpur High Court acquitted ex-Prime Minister Najib of his charge over the removal of key information from the Auditor General's 2016 report. The court also ruled to free Arul Kanda after finding he was a truthful prosecution witness and was entitled to a certificate to stop any legal proceedings against him. Najib was charged with abuse of power as a public officer in his capacity as the then Prime Minister and Finance Minister in altering the 1MDB audit report prepared by the National Audit Department, which was to be tabled to the Public Accounts Committee (PAC) in March 2016. He was accused of doing so to protect himself from civil or criminal action. Meanwhile, Arul Kanda was accused of abating Najib but had later testified as the 15th prosecution witness in the case. Najib is now serving a 12-year jail term and has been slapped with a 210 million ringgit fine after he was found guilty of abuse of power, criminal breach of trust and money laundering in the SRC International case. In other news, Bank Negara Malaysia has maintained the overnight policy rate OPR at 2.75%. The central bank said the stance of monetary policy remains accommodative and supportive of economic growth at the current OPR level.
This is the second time BNM has maintained its benchmark interest rate after 4 straight hikes last year by a total of 100 basis points to tame inflation and in response to tightening fiscal policy by the US Federal Reserve. BNM said headline and core inflation are expected to moderate in 2023, with upward pressures remaining partly contained by price controls and fuel subsidies. Although Malaysia's economy grew strongly by 8.7% last year, it said downside risks continue to stem mainly from global developments. It also expected the economy to moderate this year amid a slower global economy, adding that growth will remain driven by domestic demand.
We will go for a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. According to Bersih, the government has brought about some positive changes in its first 100 days. This includes the implementation of the Prime Minister's question and answer session and a commitment to set up an independent law commission. However, Chairperson Thomas Fan says there are still several promises the government has yet to fulfill.
I think the first thing is the allocation of constituency development fund to all members of parliament, regardless of whether they are with government or with the opposition. So to date, we have not heard any positive move towards that, even though right now it's totally under the discretion of the Prime Minister. But also, very importantly, this is a manifesto promise by both Pakatan Harapan and Barisan Nasional, giving of equal allocation. So this should have been done very quickly. Then also there is no tabling of constitutional amendment to effect the 10-year tenure limit for the Prime Minister. This is again manifesto promise and also unfulfilled promise of the MOU between Ismail Sabri and PH. So this should have been done. And another very important reform is the political financing bill. Again, it has been many governments in discussion and the bill has been drafted as we understand, and yet this has not been tabled, and also the Parliamentary Services Act as well to empower Parliament. So these are some of the disappointment that we have noted so far.
Thomas also outlines what the government should urgently look into for its next 100 days in Putrajaya.
Now is 2 months past, more than 2 months, more than 100 days after the formation of government, yet we have not seen any or heard any announcement regarding the setting up of Parliamentary Service Committee, a select committee. These are very important because members of Parliament are not just responsible for constituency duties, but also lawmaking. And these select committees are important so that all the MPs would be in a committee to look through bills and laws before they are debated in Parliament, the Dewan Rakyat itself. So this is not done. And also, we hope in the next 100 days, there will be a recognition and empowerment of the Perikatan National Shadow Cabinet with allowance, research officers, and access to information. This is important, I think, for our democracy to move to the next level by properly recognizing and resourcing the opposition.
On to the international front, nearly 200,000 people in Thailand have been admitted to hospitals due to the worsening air pollution this week. Health officials urge residents in Bangkok to stay indoors and wear masks outdoors, as the city suffers dangerously high levels of dust particles in the air. Pregnant women and children were advised to stay indoors, while anyone outside should wear the high-quality N95 anti-pollution mask. The Thai capital, home to approximately 11 million people, has been blanketed for days by an unpleasant yellow-grey mix of vehicle fumes, industrial emissions and smoke from agriculture burning. The Public Health Ministry said 50 districts in Bangkok recorded unsafe levels of PM 2.5 dust particles, so tiny they can enter the bloodstream, while long exposure can lead to chronic diseases including lung and heart problems. The Thai Meteorological Department forecasts that stagnant air, which allows for the haze to accumulate, will hang over the city's metropolitan area until Friday. More than 1.3 million people have fallen sick in the kingdom since the start of the year as a result of air pollution. Over in Indonesia, a football match official was sentenced to 1.5 years in prison after he was found guilty of negligence over one of the world's deadliest stadium stampedes. In the disaster last October, 135 spectators were killed after a football match between Arema FC and Persebaya Surabaya ended in chaos at the Kanjuruhan Stadium in East Java.
The match official, Abdul Haris, who is chairman of the organising committee for Arema FC, was found guilty of negligence and responsible for selling too many tickets, exceeding the maximum capacity of the stadium. While Arema FC security officer Suko Sutrisno was sentenced to 1 year in prison. The sentences were the first jailings handed down by Indonesia's courts over a tragedy that shocked the nation and sparked widespread anger towards local police. A number of the 42,000 Arema FC supporters ran onto the pitch following their loss to rival Persebaya Surabaya, clashing with police and prompting security officers to fire 45 rounds of tear gas into enclosed areas of the stadium, a crowd control measure banned by World Football governing body FIFA. 3 police officials who were also charged with negligence will have their cases heard at a later date.
Georgia's ruling party has announced it would withdraw a controversial draft law following mass protests and widespread international criticism. It said it was pulling the bill unconditionally, citing the need to reduce confrontation in society.
The government's U-turn followed a second night of clashes between riot police and protesters outside Parliament. Tear gas and water cannons were deployed to disperse the crowd as they protested against what they described as a Russian-style law. Under the bill, non-government groups and media who receive more than 20% of their funding from abroad need to declare themselves as foreign agents. The European Union's delegation to Georgia said the move to drop the bill was a welcomed announcement and encouraged political leaders to resume pro-EU reforms. However, opposition parties said the protests would continue until the government formally denounced the Foreign Agents Bill and released all those detained during the protests.
That wraps up Awani Tonight. I'm Fana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.